this fight that I will continue with redoubled determination. When I tried to explain to one of the family members yesterday how this process could be so broken and reach such an intolerable result, I said, "We're not done." And she said to me, "We're not even close to done." So resolute and resilient are these families that they should inspire us and uplift us in their determination to continue this work for the sake of the loved ones they lost and to keep faith with the 3,400 innocent people who have perished as a result of gun violence since November 14th and the thousands who perished before. It is not just our opportunity here in the Senate, one of the great institutions in the history of the world, but our obligation as public officials and as members of a body that hold a trust for democracy and for safety to provide better security for our people and our children. The mother of that Virginia Tech student was sitting in the same gallery with those members of Newtown, Connecticut, who lost 20 precious, beautiful children and 6 brave, great educators. They were keeping vigil as the Senate turned its back on them. And despite their profound and harrowing loss, those parents, husbands and wives, sons and daughters, sisters and brothers, grandmothers and grandfathers, have kept faith. They have spent the last 4 months tirelessly and relentlessly advocating for changes and reforms in our gun laws so that that loss they suffered will not have been in vain. And still, the United States Senate failed in its responsibility in turning its back on them. I don't want to relive December 14th, when I went to Sandy Hook and heard and saw the grief and pain of those parents and loved ones as they emerged from the firehouse. On that unspeakable and unimaginable horror, I don't want to see again. Yesterday was demoralizing and discouraging, but not defeating, because ultimately this reform will be delayed but not denied. Because of the massacre of 20 innocent children and their teachers will bring us ultimately to our senses, but so will the violence and carnage and killing since then. In the words of Mark Barden, whose son Daniel is in this picture, we are not defeated. We are here now. We will always be here because we have no other choice. The Connecticut effect is not going away. The Bardens are not going away, nor are any of the Newtown families. The advocates of sensible, common-sense gun reform are not going away. We are here to stay. For Mark and Jackie Barden and all of the other families from Newtown and every other victim of gun violence in this country, there is no going back. There is no turning back the page. We must simply move on to the next issue. As the bicycle team who came from Newtown to Washington, Team 26, said, we must go on pedaling. The only way to keep a bicycle upright is to move forward. That is the simple lesson of life that the families of Newtown learned in their horrific tragedy. And I will continue to stand with them and all of the other victims of gun violence to work and fight another day. And I say to every one of my colleagues, my friends who sided with the proponents of fear, do not underestimate the power of the Newtown families and the other victims of gun violence. They are not going away, and they will help to hold accountable and answerable to the people of America the actions that were taken here, the votes that were cast. Votes have consequences, just as elections do. And the people of America will remember. Our job now is to raise awareness, spread the rage that we feel, raise that rage, and organize and enable and empower citizens to be heard and heeded by this body, whether in the next election or before then. And my hope is that it will be before then, because we must act before the next election. And that action is an opportunity, a historic moment that we must seize. Not everyone in this body turned its back on the victims of Newtown or on this cause yesterday, and there were genuine profiles in courage on this floor in this body. First and foremost, Senator Manchin, who led the fight on background checks and forged a compromise that should have won the day. And Republicans who chose to buck their own leadership and follow their hearts and consciences. Senators McCain, Collins, Kirk, and Toomey. The American people will thank you. And there are Democrats who took some tough votes. Tough votes, particularly for their state. And I want to thank Senators Hagan, Casey, Landrieu, Heinrich, Mark and Tom Udall, John Tester, and Senator Shaheen. These senators put saving lives above the politics of the moment, and they showed true leadership in the face of lies and fear-mongering, and they deserve our thanks and praise. And I want to pay tribute to the senators who have led this effort over many, many years. Senators Feinstein, Lautenberg, Schumer, and Durbin. I want to thank my colleague Chris Murphy for his leadership and his courage. Senators Feinstein, Lautenberg, Schumer, and Durbin have been a tireless foursome on behalf of this fight. They have been dogged and determined, and no amount of NRA deception or dishonesty has deterred them or stopped them. And I want to thank the Majority Leader, Harry Reid, for his courage. He has persevered in seeking a path forward on this legislation in the face of some of the most difficult political and procedural obstacles. And he has been as passionate and persevering in this cause as any one of the advocates in these last weeks. If you want to know the definition of resilient, look up Frank Lautenberg in the dictionary, because there he was right here yesterday after weeks of debilitating illness with his wife Bonnie in the gallery. She cheered him on, and so did we. Nothing was going to keep him from voting on the gun control bills he has championed for a lifetime. So in moving forward, let us take heart and inspiration from the families of Newtown who have been resolute and resilient at every turn, from the continued strength of the advocates, from the courage of our colleagues who stood strong yesterday, and from the American people. I have said, along with others, that at the end of the day, the American people would be the ones to make a difference. Their rage and disbelief is palpable, and they will be there for Daniel Barton. He is only one among thousands. You've seen their pictures. They've been on display on this floor. Their names have been recited. and their memories revived. Yesterday, the United States Senate said no to America, but the people of America will not take no for an answer. As Martin Luther King said, the arc of history is long, but it bends toward justice. And we are on the right side of history, which will eventually vindicate this cause, and I look forward to being here, if not within days, at least in the very near future, when we take another vote and we stand 60 or more strong to make sure that Daniel Barden's memory is not in vain, and that his brave parents are also vindicated in their trust in us. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the floor. I note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.
President.
Senator from Connecticut.
I ask that the quorum call be lifted.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I have 10 unanimous consent requests for committees to meet during today's session of the Senate. They have the approval of the majority and minority leaders. I ask unanimous consent that these requests be agreed to and that these requests be printed in the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor, and I suggest the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.